You already pressed it? Okay. So I want you to think about these words for a second. Class, I want you to close all your books. I want you to pull out a piece of paper, right? A number 2 pencil. We're going to take a test. How, does that make you feel all warm and fuzzy inside? Right? No. Right? We all hated that, right? What was worse is when it's a pop quiz, right? When all of a sudden you're being surprised and you're being asked to answer questions, right? What at least I liked more was when you had the type of teacher who would take the time to go over the material of what was going to be on the test, so that when it came time to actually take that test, you were prepared, right? It wasn't a surprise. You knew what was going to be expected. And then you knew how to be ready for that test. You could be confident about that, right? So that's what God has done for us. He's told us exactly what he expects of us. And because of that, then, there is going to come a time of testing, a time of judgment, but we should be confident. We should be prepared because God has told us exactly what we need to know so that we can be prepared for when that time comes. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at an entire chapter, Matthew chapter 25, but we're going to break it up into 3 sections, right? Because there's 3 parables, 3 stories in Matthew chapter 25. Stories that you are all familiar with. You all probably know better than I do. What I want to point out is not only the stories, but there's a particular reason why they are in the order that they are. And if there's anything, hopefully, that you get out of this lesson, it's not necessarily what's in the stories, but what is in the order or the sequence of how those stories were presented for us to learn from. So Paul wrote, test yourselves. Test yourselves to see if you are in the faith. Examine yourselves. Or do you not recognize this about yourselves, that Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you fail the test? So testing is a Bible concept. It's something that we're supposed to do. What is the purpose of a test, right? It's not to make the teacher look good, right? The purpose of a test is so that we can gauge for ourselves, right? How do we measure up, right? Have we mastered the material, right? Do we understand what are we going to do? And it's not to embarrass the student, but it's actually for the student's benefit so that they can see, right, are they achieving the goal of what they're trying to do and what they're trying to master. So he says, test yourself. To do what? To see if Jesus Christ is in you. John chapter 5, right? We know that there is going to be a judgment, right? That there is going to be a judgment. He says the hour is coming in which all who are in the graves will hear his voice and come forth. Those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of condemnation. This is what we're preparing for one day, for when that judgment happens. And the way that we prepare for that event is by how we live our lives day by day while we're here in this earth, right? So testing ourselves, seeing if Jesus Christ is in us. So that is what we're going to do. And our study guide really is kind of in Matthew chapter 25. But in order to, right, set ourselves up, really kind of starts back in Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24, Jesus is coming out of the temple and he's with his disciples and they point out the buildings to him. Mark tells us, look at these stones, these Herodian stones, of how great this building was, this temple that had been erected. And Jesus says, do you not see all of these things? These wonderful buildings, all of this that looks so permanent. And what Jesus says is, truly I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another which will not be thrown down. Jesus says, don't be impressed by the things that you see around you. Eventually, it's all going to come down, right? And that is the message that we all have, right? One day, everything we see around us, everything that looks so permanent, like it's going to last forever, it's all going to cease. So the apostles, right, they're obviously intrigued by this. They want to find out more. So they go out across the Kidron Valley. They go up to the Mount of Olives overlooking Jerusalem. They could clearly see the temple from where they were. And they're curious and they want to know more. And they say, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So I believe there's two questions, at least in Matthew's account, right? One is, when will these things be? These stones being torn down, one not upon another, right? When is that going to happen? And what is going to be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age, right? Jesus had told them, right? There's going to be a day where everyone's going to hear my voice and is going to rise out of the ground. So I believe they're asking two questions, but in their mind, they probably tied the two of them together to a certain extent, because certainly something as big as the temple being torn down would certainly drive the end of an age or the end of the era, right? Right, when are these things going to happen? So Jesus tells them, he says, right, to be on the alert, right? You do not know the day when the Lord is coming. He says, therefore be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour when you do not expect. I wonder why he said that. I mean, why didn't he just tell us when he's coming? Right? Why wouldn't he just say, on August 30th, 2020, that is the day I'm going to come? I have no insight. There's nothing special about that day, right? Okay, so, but on August 30th, 2020, that is the day I'm going to come. I think some people might wait until August 29th and say, oh, Jesus is coming. I think maybe some people might even wait till that morning and go, oh yeah, Jesus is coming today, right? The thing is, you can't cram for this exam, right? This isn't an exam that you get to take an extension on it, right? If you're running late, you can't be sick that day. You're not going to be able to take a makeup. You're not going to be able to do a do-over on it, right? This is the exam, and Jesus is going to examine us on how have we lived our lives each and every day. And we don't know when that day is going to be, so we need to be ready at all times. So this sets up then the questions of what do we need to know to prepare for that judgment, for that final exam. And as we look at Matthew 25, the first of these parables are you on the alert? This is what he deals with as he starts off this chapter, telling them, are you on the alert? And he tells them a story. He gives them a parable. He says then, starting in verse 1, that the kingdom of heaven shall be likened to 10 virgins who took their lamps and they went out to meet the bridegroom. Now 5 of them were wise and 5 were foolish. Those who were foolish took their lamps and they took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with the lamps. So Jesus is telling them a story of something that they would have been very familiar with the custom of their times. These virgins, these are the bridesmaids. This is a wedding party, right? So these are the bridesmaids, and what would happen is they would wait outside of the bride's father's house, and the bride and the bridegroom would march through the city, and they would come, right? And they would come in, and it would be a celebration. It was a feast. So then what would happen is, as they would come, these bridesmaids would then accompany the wedding party into the feast. They would close the doors and they would begin the celebration. So the thing is, they didn't anticipate the timing of when the bridegroom was going to come. So 5 of them were prepared. 5 of them were not prepared. So while the bridegroom was delayed, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight a cry was heard, behold, the bridegroom is coming. Let's go out to meet him. Then all of those virgins arose and they trimmed their lamps. And the foolish ones said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the wise answered, saying, No, lest there should not be enough for us and you, but rather go to those who sell and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding, and the door was shut. Afterwards, the other virgins came also, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and he said, Assuredly, I say to you, I do not know you. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour in which the Son of Man is coming. 5 were prepared, 5 were unprepared. It wasn't a high enough priority item for them, right? For them to think it all the way through of what did they need to do, right? And the door was shut. And so they're banging on the door and they're crying, open to us. And he says, I don't know you. And the reason was because they were unprepared. So Luke tells us some of the reasons why, as he's talking about, right, the destruction of the temple and what would come. And he's warning them there. And he says, take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and cares of this life. And that day come upon you unexpectedly, for it will come as a snare on all of those who dwell on the face of the whole earth. So he gives 3 reasons of why people are unprepared. The first of those is, he says, carousing, right? That partying spirit, the type of person who just lives it up. I live for today. I don't worry about tomorrow. Just living in the moment. Drunkenness, probably not a problem for most of us who are here. But what about the last one, right? The worries of life, the cares of this life, the concerns and the cares it takes to manage all the stuff that we have to manage, right? Worldliness isn't always just carousing and drunkenness, right? But it's this world view of life, right? Allowing ourselves to become distracted by all of the pleasures and the luxuries and all of the things that we think that we need, to where that becomes our focus, right? Jesus said it's hard for a rich man to get to heaven. He didn't say it's impossible, but what he said that it is hard because he gets comfortable with the things that he has around him, right? Luxuries over time become necessities. I remember growing up, right? We didn't have air conditioning, and you would go to the movie theater just to get air conditioning, and you'd go in and it would feel, I got to tell you right now, air conditioning, it's a necessity. So, I mean, but, right, if I didn't have it, right, you adapt, you get used to it, right? But it's a gradual process, right? How do we break that to become more like Jesus, where we're less focused on the things here? In these 5 foolish virgins, he said to them, I don't know you. You're not like me. You're not the type of people that are being prepared. You're allowing yourselves to be distracted. You're not on the alert. They weren't like him. Well, what does that mean to be on the alert? And that's really what the next story is about, right? Are you doing what you can? Right? And so now he gives the parable of the 10 talents. So he says that the kingdom of heaven is like a man traveling to a far country, who has called his own servants and delivered his goods to them, right? This is what we do with our children, right? Right, as they mature, we give them more money as they show they're responsible for it. So what he does is he gives to the rich man, he gives him 10 talents, right? He gave 5 to one, he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his ability. Right? Just like we do with our children. And immediately he went on a journey. And then he who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them and made another 5 talents. Likewise, he had received 2, gained 2 more also. But he that received 1 went and dug in the ground, and he hid his Lord's money. Now, after a long time, the Lord of these servants came to settle their accounts. And so, to he who had 5 talents, He brought him another 5 talents, saying, Lord, you delivered to me 5 talents. Look, I have gained 5 more talents besides them. And his Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord. That's how we get more responsibility, right? That's how God uses us more, is we use what we have, right? And we see that the 2-talent man, he was similarly rewarded as the 5-talent man was. But for the 1-talent man, it says that he received 1 talent, came and said, Lord, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And I was afraid. And I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Look, you have what is yours. It sounds like a hard boss, right? So this man said, I was afraid, and I went and I hid your talent in the ground. See, you have what is yours. But the Lord answered and said to him, you wicked and lazy servant. Not only was he wicked, right? What he says is, you were lazy. He says, you knew that I reap where I did not sow and gathered where I scattered no seed. It's not necessarily saying that it's true, but he's saying, that's what you thought of me. If that is what you thought of me, that I was that type of a boss, that I would expect the impossible from people, then at least you should have taken that money, deposited with the bankers, and at my coming, I would have at least received back my own with interest. He was trying to give an excuse. He was trying to give an excuse of why he had not done anything with the talents that his master had given him. So he says, take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. Cast the unprofitable servant into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Does that maybe sound a little unfair, that the 10-talent man now has 11 talents? Well, if you were wanting results, who would you invest your money with, right? The type of servant that is going to bring something back for you, or the type of servant who's going to do nothing with what you give them, right? Why is it that maybe some churches just dry up and die? It's because they're not doing anything, right? Why would God give them more for them to not do anything with it? He expects us to do what we can to take those opportunities. And that is what he wants out of us, is that we take those and that we use them. But it takes commitment, right? It takes commitment of all of us. Found an interesting quote from Abraham Lincoln on commitment. It says, commitment is what transforms a promise into a reality. There's a lot of people who talk, but they don't necessarily deliver. He said, it's the words that speak boldly of your intentions, and the actions which speak louder than words. It's making the time when there is none, right? There's just some people that if you call on them, they're always going to make the time. They make the time for the important things. It's making the time when there is none, coming through time after time, year after year. Does that describe you? Does that describe me, right? Does that describe us as a church, right? Are we the type of people that can be dependent upon? That's what Jesus is wanting out of us, right? Is that the way that we live our lives? Are we doing what we can with what he has given us? Well, what does it mean? He wants us to do what we can, right? I'm not sure. What can I do? That's the purpose of the next story, right? Are you serving others, right? And this is really the acid test of, are you doing what you can, right? Are you being on the alert, right? And so Jesus tells the story of the sheep and the goats. So he starts off in verse 31, and he says, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another, as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats. And he will set the sheep on the right hand, but the goats on the left. And the king will say to those on the right hand, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. And the righteous will answer, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and gave you drink? When did we see you a stranger, take you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and come to you? Right? We would have done that for you. We certainly would have done that for you, Lord, if we ever saw you that way. We don't ever remember seeing you that way or coming to you, right? And the king will answer and say to them, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these my brethren, you did it to me. Jesus is saying, that's the beauty of it. You never saw me. You never saw me, but yet you did it anyway. You did it to other people, and you saw me in each and every person that needed your help. You were serving me when you were serving them. Serving others is what it means to be serving Christ. And he'll say to those on the left hand, depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, you did not take me in. Naked, you did not clothe me. Sick and in prison, you did not visit me. And they will also answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger, naked or sick or in prison, and not minister to you? Right? We would have done that. We love you, Lord. If we ever saw you like that, we're so devoted to you, we would have taken care of you. Right? And he'll answer them and say, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And these will go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. Jesus said, serving others is serving him. Love one another as I have loved you. Jesus is going to ask us one day, right? How did you treat one another? How did you help one another, right? It really gets tested when we have a fallout with an employee or a neighbor, right? And they're testing us, right? Someone who's hurt us, right? How did you treat them, right? How did you respond to them, right? The poor, the sick, the weak, struggling. How did you do there, right? He's going to want to know. Jesus loves all of us. He wants us all to be saved, right? Serving them is not just serving their physical needs, but did you teach them what they needed to know to be saved, right? Teaching others about Christ. How did you do in that regards? Are you serving others, giving them what they need? But do you notice something about these questions? The way that they're worded, they're all present tense, right? Are you on the alert? Are you doing what you can? Are you serving others? Not, were you on the alert last year? Or will you be serving others next year? Or one day you're going to do what you can, right? Jesus wants to know, is this how you live your life each and every day? Are you on the alert? Are you doing what you can? Are you serving others right now? Right? That's what he's going to be asking us. So, how'd you do on the pretest? Right? Are you ready? Are you confident? Right? I have a feeling maybe there's a sense of doubt, right? Something that we all probably struggle with, right? I try to be on the alert, right? But sometimes I'm not. I try to do what I can, but sometimes I don't, right? I want to serve others, but I definitely know there's more that I could be doing, right? Does that maybe more describe you? Right, so luckily there's an extra credit question, right? And if you can answer this, it will help to take care of those other ones. You know what that extra credit question is, right? It is Jesus Christ in you. That's what we're testing ourselves for, right? Is he the driving force in your life? Is he the reason? Is he the one that you serve? Right? Because, right, if Jesus Christ is in you, he gives us instruction on how we stay on the alert, right? He provided an example and he helps us to do what we can. He shows us, he motivates us, right? And he gives us the power so that we can serve others, and he forgives us when we fail, right? Is Jesus Christ in you? And it's important that you can answer that question, because there's going to come a time where we are all going to be tested. We're going to have to give an account, right? Jesus said he's going to come at a time when you don't expect. Does maybe August 23rd between 6 and 7, did any one of you have August 23rd between 6 and 7 o'clock? That was the time Jesus was going to come back. Do you have that on your calendar when you woke up this morning? So would maybe right now, would that count as a time that Jesus could come that we didn't expect? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No? Okay. 5, 4. We can't live that way, right? So, and that's not how he wants us to live, but what we need to know is the clock is ticking. It ticks each and every day. So each and every day, we need to make sure we're doing what he wants us to be doing, that we're being ready, we're on the alert, we're doing what we can, and that we're serving others, right? If you're a parent, you have families to serve. If you have a job, you have employers to serve, right? You have a community to serve. You have brethren to serve. We have to be busy serving our Lord by serving others. Test yourselves to see if you're in the faith. Examine yourselves, or do you not recognize this about yourselves, that Jesus Christ is in you, unless indeed you fail the test? Only Christ can perfect us, right? Heaven is a perfect place for perfected people. Right? We can't earn our way into heaven, right? But Jesus can help perfect us, to help get us ready so that we can go to a place, a perfect place for perfected people. And he's going to come back. And when he comes back, he wants to know, how did you live each and every day? Were you on the alert? Each and every day, were you doing what you can? Each and every day, were you serving others? Right? Obviously, it begins, right? Is Jesus Christ is in you, right? Paul says those who have been baptized into Christ have put on Christ, right? Made Jesus Christ part of them. But are we seeing Christ in us each and every day as we live through our lives? Right? Are we growing? Are we becoming those types of people? So that is what, hopefully, right, the sequence of what these parables are. Help prepare us for that day, for when that judgment comes. He's telling us, what do we need to do, right? So we can be confident that when he comes, we can say, yes, we're ready. We've understood the materials. We were prepared. That's what we have the opportunity for. If for any reason you're lacking, you want to come forward, please come forward as we stand and sing.
There's a fountain, drink this wine, you and me. Let us taste, oh, haste to its spring.